All right. So welcome everyone to our FAS Scholarship Committee College 101 series. Our session today is going to be called The College Experience, and we are very honored to have our special guests, Zaak Barnes, Kayla Tejero, and Liam Wells. They are going to sit on our panel today, and we're just going to ask them some questions about how their college experience went. But before I start, I would like to introduce our scholarship committee, just because they've worked so hard on getting these educational webinars put together for all college students who are either starting college or who are in college. First of all, my name is Roxy Strike. I'm co-chair for the scholarship committee. We also have Steve Eckert, who is our fearless leader and co-chair. And Kimberly Roberts as well, who's been instrumental in getting these going because she works for Simpson College in the admissions office, and she has a whole wealth of knowledge that she brings to our little committee. So thanks y'all for putting this together and getting this all coordinated. With that, let's go ahead and get started. And Steve, I'm going to kick it over to you.
All right, great. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. What I was going to start with was having each one of you introduce yourself, tell us about maybe what college you're attending, what your major is, what year you're in, stuff like that. So why don't we go ahead and start with Liam on that?
Hi, I'm Liam. I'm studying at the University of Iowa. This is my second year, and I'm majoring in computer science.
Awesome. Go ahead, Kayla.
Hi, my name is Kayla Tejero. I go to Aurora University here in Aurora, Illinois. I am graduating this December with a degree in nursing. Fingers crossed.
Awesome. And Zachary.
My name is Zaak Barnes, and I went to Iowa State University, and I graduated with a degree in political science.
Awesome.
Grad school, Zach.
Oh yeah, I also attended Drake University for a master's degree in communication, which Roxy knows all about because she was a big motivating force behind the scenes.
All right. Well, thank you and welcome to all of you. Kimberly, would you like to start with a question or?
Yeah, I can start. What would you guys say was the biggest adjustment you had going from high school to college?
Zach, I'm going to call you out first. Why don't you kick us off?
I think the biggest adjustment for me was just the change in agency. So when I was in high school, your parents sort of do a lot of telling you what to do, or I guess depending on your parents. In your living situation. My parents did a lot of telling me what to do and sort of activities to participate in or what classes I needed to take. So going to college and being on my own and sort of the increased autonomy was probably one of the biggest adjustments I had to make just because I was responsible, or I was supposed to be responsible for everything that I was doing, from classes I was taking and decisions I was making about my own educational career to like intramurals and work arrangements. So really all of that was put on my shoulders instead of having like help from my parents. So that was probably, I think, the biggest adjustment I had to make.
How about you, Kayla?
Yeah, sure. To go off of that, I would have to agree with Zachary. Like in high school, I feel like we were kind of fed with a spoon. There's always somebody to remind us of our assignments that are due, like our teachers and our parents to kind of hold us accountable. But when we go to college, especially if we go out of state and we're dorming, like we're not staying at home, there's no one to do that for us, right? So I feel like in college, it takes a lot of self-discipline and just holding yourself accountable, like Zachary said.
Do you have anything to add, Liam?
Not really. They basically said what I was thinking. Really, living on your own, being independent, lots more responsibility. Probably the biggest change is going from high school to college, definitely.
All right, cool.
So can I ask one real quick follow-up question to all of that? So how did y'all kind of figure out how to, like really be more self-disciplined? And was it just kind of trial and error? I know I kind of stumbled my way through college until I figured it out after a couple of years. But, what did you do to kind of help yourself like really drill down and hold yourself accountable?
A lot of it was trial and error, or like being involved in intramural activities that required a lot of discipline to even participate. So, like things that had a very rigid schedule to sort of force you to be somewhere on time or meet certain requirements ahead of time. So a lot of it was just sort of like being in a situation that just made you adapt, I guess, if that makes sense.
For me, I definitely made use of like a physical planner. So like I'll have all of my due dates in there, like day to day, to do things like to-do lists and whatnot. But that helps me keep myself organized and also to like physically remind me of the things that I need to do.
Yeah, same. I didn't have a physical planner, but I was definitely planning out my day, scheduling, kind of doing things early, making sure I know what I'm doing ahead of time. Yeah, just getting everything planned out, I think really helped out.
The one question that kind of follows along the same lines was, how did you balance, your social life compared to school? How about Kayla?
That is a great question. So for me, like I feel like I have a lot of a lot of things on my plate. Sorry. So like I have school, like church on the weekends, and of course like self-care and spending time with friends and family. But I think it really is about time management. We have 24 hours in our day. 8 hours spent sleeping, however many hours spent at school. So I think it's just like allotting time. 2 hours I'm going to study. After that, I'm going to take an hour break, maybe go get ice cream with my friends. And then after, I'll study again, because you can't study all day. You can't party like all night. So it really is all about balance.
How about Liam?
Yeah, kind of the same thing about planning. I'd try and like set time to study, set time to spend time with friends, try and balance all that and get my assignments done on time so I could have a social life, participate in clubs, and spend time with friends. But if there was ever a time, I would prioritize school, I think. If I need to work more on assignments and stuff, I'd let my friends know, like, I can't make it. But yeah, usually just try it and plan all that ahead of time so it can all work out.
In my case, I ended up not actually striking a balance between work, school, and my social life until probably my sophomore or junior year. And that was going back to like the adjustments that we made, was probably one of the bigger things, was just trying to figure out kind of how to do all of that, because it was a new experience and sort of like a new situation that I was in. But ultimately, I think I was able to figure it out with the help of a lot of like mentors, like my academic advisors, people in my residence hall that I was able to sort of use as role models, who helped me plan all that stuff out. But it definitely wasn't just me finding a balance. It was a lot of people sort of pointing me in the right direction.
I was the same way, Zach. And no judgment if it does take a while to try and find that balance, because like all of you have said, it's hard to figure out like how am I going to hold myself accountable. And I definitely put too much priority on having fun in Dallas, Texas, instead of studying. And yeah, it took me a couple of years to figure it out too. So yeah, you definitely need that support system around you, like Zach said.
Okay, Roxy, do you have a question?
Yeah, so let me see here. So I don't know if all of y'all, I think Zach, you lived on campus. Kayla, do you live on campus or off campus?
Off campus. I just commute since school is like 15 minutes away.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's awesome. And then Liam, since you go at Iowa City, I'm guessing you probably lived in the dorms that first year. So what is it like living on campus in the dorms, or eventually when you like move off campus? What's that like? Are there any benefits to staying in the dorms versus getting your own apartment? Would you recommend maybe staying in the dorms for a year and then going off campus? What's kind of that experience like as we talk about living on our own for the first time?
Yeah, I can talk about this a bit. So last year, I was living in the dorms, and I definitely recommend it for the first year living on campus. It's just a lot easier to get to your classes. You're closer, dining halls really close too, but also getting to know people. It's your first year there. You want to make connections, and there's all these people in your dorm hall to get to know and everything. And RAs also, or resident advisors also, plan events to get to know people in your halls, and I think that's a really good way to make connections and everything. I didn't have a roommate, but definitely living with a roommate, you can make friends, but I don't know, sometimes it doesn't work out. Yeah, dorms definitely recommend the first year to live in.
How about you, Zach?
So as Roxy mentioned, I lived in the dorms for pretty much most of my time in college, for a couple of reasons, actually. So my freshman year, we at Iowa State, at least, we were made to live in the dorms as like a requirement, I think, as joining as a freshman. The stability, also having a meal plan, was a pretty good advantage. But then after my freshman year, I got involved in the student government at Iowa State, and there were a couple different layers. So I was involved in the Residence Hall Association, and to continue to be involved in that, you had to be a Residence Hall student. Into my junior and senior years, though, I think the biggest advantage for being a Residence Hall student was the ability to cancel your lease with the Department of Residence in case of like an internship or externship. If you had to move away from campus for academic reasons, then they were able to do that basically without any penalty to the student. And as I got older, I wanted a place where I could live with that in mind in case I ended up having to move away from Iowa State, or if I graduated a semester earlier than I planned on, which ended up being the case. So my final 2 years at Iowa State, I really only spent 2 separate semesters on campus, even though I was still like a residence hall student, if that makes sense. So I think the flexibility with the leasing agreements was probably one of the biggest attractions for me for continuing to stay on the residence hall.
Yeah, and Kayla, what are some advantages for commuting into school? I think my junior year, I moved in with some family friends, and I know that helped save me some money, and it was much cheaper, and there was always food on the table. So yeah, like what's been your experience being a commuter student going to school?
Definitely. I think the biggest like pro is obviously you save so much money on room and board because it is so expensive. But for me, it's nice because I am very involved in my church. Like I have some singing engagements on the weekend. So it's nice to be able to be home and be able to, tend to those events and whatnot. And like for me, I am an only child. So like I have a lot of space here in my house. But I know for other people, like, if you have a big family, maybe you guys are cramped in the house, like it'd be nice to dorm, have your own space, maybe with a roommate. But I definitely think that I missed out on, that idea of living on my own, sharing space with a roommate and like being able to meet a lot of people in the dorm setting rather than like at school in the classroom setting. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome. My next question was regarding online classes compared to being in person. I know when I was in college, you had an opportunity to take some of the classes online if you chose to and be able to do it from residence hall or from home and have most of your classes in person. I know some people were forced the last couple of years to do some online classes totally instead of in person. What has been your experience between in person and online classes? How about Kayla?
Or like when COVID hit, we obviously were online, and I felt like it was harder to concentrate here at home. Like there was just so many distractions, and I'd sit on my couch watching my lecture, and I'd end up falling asleep. I hate to admit that, but it happened. So like for me, I do prefer like in-person classes, being able to, be face to face with my professor, with other students, because it's a environment where we're meant to learn. Hopefully there are not as many distractions, but yeah, I prefer the in-person.
And Kayla, being a nursing student, you would want to definitely be in person, I'm sure, because there's a lot of hands-on learning too, right?
Yes, most definitely. And it just wasn't the same, like to
Yeah.
just say it flat out, like it was not the same. I feel like I didn't learn as much, but we're in person now, so I'm grateful for that.
How about you, Zach?
So my first time with online classes was actually while I was in high school. I had the opportunity to take classes through DMAC, the Des Moines Area Community College, for both high school and college credits, and that was through Blackboard, and it was just all text-based, so it was pretty rough. I really relate to Kayla. It's like you log on and it's super boring, and like what else can you do on a computer, or sort of like watch something more entertaining. So I was fortunate, I guess, being able to do that while I was in high school, because then that sort of prepared me for being in college and having sessions I had to that were required to attend online, either virtually or during my graduate program, being to use Blackboard again, which is probably my college arch nemesis. But being like sort of prepared for that ahead of time, and being able to mentally prepare and have like a set space where I know like this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to sit down and work on this, to really sort of like emphasize the academic, I think, aspect of having an online class, because it's still a class. But it was still sort of a challenge to adjust to, I think. But it was a good experience overall, I would say, having a class online.
And Liam, did you have any online classes, or are you just totally in person?
No, actually, last year I did have one online class, and for some people, online works. They can pay attention and it works out. But for me, I found like in my room, I was just too distracted. And yeah, it was hard to pay attention. And I'll admit, I also sometimes miss the Zoom meeting. Luckily, there was recordings, so I could just rewatch it. But I always felt behind if I was just watching the recording. And just having a course in a lecture hall or a classroom, definitely easier to pay attention, learn, and definitely prefer that.
Yeah, it definitely seems like it kind of carries on with the theme of like accountability, self-discipline that we were talking about at the very beginning. And it's like even more so with online classes. Steve, so I have another question that kind of aligns with what Liam and Kayla and Zach were saying is, I knew when I was in college, it was weird. Like I didn't really go to the library to study. I just kind of studied in my room. But like I knew my desk was like my study space, and I only studied at my desk. I didn't do anything else at my desk. And then, like I would read books in bed, and that was like where I always read books. So, I did a really good job of like compartmentalizing the different space in my apartment of where I was studying. But for y'all, is that a similar experience? Did you find there's like you study better in certain spaces? Whether it's the library, or was there like some other cool spot that you found that really helps you focus and concentrate while you were studying or doing your online classes, or anything like that?
I think for me, the best place for me to study is like my dining room table at my house because I can spread out like all my books, all my papers. Definitely not a couch or a bed because I will fall asleep. But I also like to study at, cafes or the library because I prefer like no sound, like no background noise so that I can really focus.
I can go next. And I think for me, I had to get out of my dorm while I was in college. It was like where all my friends were, is where my roommate was. I had a roommate, unlike Liam, which was both nice and also not because we had different schedules. So we would sort of like step on each other's toes sometimes. But the challenge for me was like the responsibility on my own to actually go study. So I tried to be in a place that was outside my dorm that I could study, but also not like isolated. So I was by myself because then I would be more likely to like watch videos online or something. So I ended up sitting at a variety of different coffee shops around campus, just like at a table by myself, a small table. I didn't want to take a big one, but like with my book open, my notes open, so that I would actually sort of be there studying. And if people saw me, they would just be like, oh, that guy is studying. So I would kind of have to study based on that sort of like implied peer pressure, I guess, if that makes sense. That was me.
I typically studied in my dorm room, although it wasn't the best place for me. I definitely felt more productive in the library or in the dorm study lounges. Again, less distractions. Really just focusing on my work there. While in my dorm, there's like games on my computer, like social media, and that'd be a distraction sometimes. But yeah, near the end of the year, I think I out of convenience, I kind of just stayed in my room, but definitely more productive in the library and other places.
Awesome.
And I
Kimberly.
definitely, oh, sorry. I was gonna say, I
Sorry,
definitely
go ahead.
found where I went to school. So you had your undergrad and then like the graduate school. And the graduate schools had their own separate libraries. And so I would go to the graduate school libraries and study there because then there weren't as many students in there, but there was still just enough background noise for me with like the graduate students. And they had a lot nicer desks and stuff because they have, it's a little bit more fancy when you're in grad school. So that was like one of the places that I would always go to study, was actually like the theology school library was probably the best place for me on campus. So yeah, if you can find like the grad school libraries, I would definitely recommend that as well.
I think it's so funny hearing you guys say you need quiet spaces because I am the complete opposite. I need loud noise for me to study. So for me, when I was in undergrad, I actually went to our student center, which is the noisiest place on our campus. And while like my friends and stuff would come by and talk, I loved the fact that I was near everything in the hustle and bustle because it reminded me that I was in college compared to somewhere quiet where I might actually fall asleep. So, but speaking of studying and getting your work done, can you guys, I know one of the hardest adjustments for me, at least my first year, was figuring out like what is a college class? How is that different than high school? So can you guys speak on that and how like homework and studying is a little different?
Yeah,
Zach,
so
go. Oh, sorry, Liam, you go.
I'll go ahead. College is a lot different than high school. You got way different schedule. In high school you got the same classes every day, same length, just back to back. But in college you got classes maybe 2 or 3 times a week. You could have a whole day with no classes, like have a 3-day weekend. But and there's just a lot of time in between classes too. And you're going to different buildings. Like some classes are really big, with hundreds of people. Some are just like a dozen. It really varies, and it's a lot different than high school. But yeah, college courses, you're spending most of your time taking notes in classes, lectures and stuff. And then there's at least at the University of Iowa, there's like separate discussion times for working with other students on like practice questions, if you're doing like a math or computer science course, or if you're doing something else. It's just like talking with other students, discussing the topics covered in the lectures. But actually working on assignments, that's all done like outside of class. You're doing that on your own. You got to set your own time to work on assignments and study.
Go ahead, Kayla.
Okay, I wasn't sure. So in high school, you know, we have like 9 to 10 classes, and we're there from like 7 a.m. to, I don't even remember what time, like I think it was 7 to 4. So like we did have more classes, and we were there like obviously like 5 times a week. But in college, like Liam said, like you can have a 3-day weekend, or like you're only at school for a few hours and a few days of the week. Like for me, I'm only at school Tuesday and Thursday for lecture, and then Monday and Wednesday I have clinical. So that's obviously very different from high school. But I feel like in high school, you have more classes that aren't as hard. And then in college, like you have 4 to 5 classes, maybe 3 to 5 classes that are more difficult in content. So it raises a question, you know, like quality versus quantity. So in college, like the quality of the classes are a little more difficult, which definitely makes it more hard. But like for assignments and whatnot, like Liam said, you mostly do that on your own time. And I feel like you have to have that will in you to, you know, set aside time to study and complete your assignments. So I think that's the main difference.
It's been a bit of a longer time, I think, since I was at least in my undergrad. So the type of class, I think, is a bit outside my recall. But as far as like the homework goes, at least in the liberal arts program, we had a lot more like sort of creative control over our assignments, which I thought was really nice. So originally when I went for my undergrad, it was for engineering. So everything was like very strict and very regimented. Switching to liberal arts for a degree in political science, a lot of our homework switched to being like writing based and analysis based. So there's a lot of different directions you could go with it, and being able to sort of do what you wanted with your homework made it, I think, a lot more fun and a lot more engaging, because you weren't just doing what someone told you to do, but you could also sort of go on your own direction and explore a little bit the class materials or even beyond that. So I think the college homework was more fun, I think, than in high school, because in high school it's pretty standardized and pretty set for everybody. But actually completing tasks in college, I thought, was a bit more rewarding and more engaging for me, I should say.
Zach, I followed the same track. I went to school for pre-med, and then, as I said earlier, I kept switching my major and eventually ended up in liberal arts as a journalism major. But yeah, I remember switching from that. It was like, okay, you have to do like this biology assignment. And then when I started to get into the more liberal arts classes, you would ask the professor, like, okay, what should I write about? And the response is like, I don't know, what do you want to write about? And so, yeah, I kind of appreciated that in college you had a little bit more control. And it really teaches you to kind of think outside the box and think much more critically. Whereas in high school, it seemed like it was very just like rote knowledge and just repeating back what your teachers told you. And that kind of is what I vaguely remember from like 15 years ago. So.
All right. My next question is for each one of you is, was there anything that you didn't expect in college that you experienced? How about Zach?
You surprised me with that one. I think the thing I didn't expect was as the more advanced your classes became, the greater the one-on-one interaction became with your professors, which I thought was super helpful, especially as the challenges became, or as the classes became more challenging. Having that sort of access to your professors and sort of the smaller class settings was a surprise, but it was also a welcome one. So we could like have more like personal interactions with our professors, but also like get some more like individualized guidance from the people who are leading our classes and a bit more instruction. And even with the faculty, sometimes, like at Iowa State University, there's a tradition for students to steal trays from the cafeteria in the MU, and I'm not condoning theft, but we would steal them and go sledding on the hill outside the university president's house before returning the trays back to the MU. But during these activities, typically the president or his spouse or her spouse would come out and bring like hot chocolate or cider for the students and talk to whoever was out there. So there's just a whole bunch of like random, I guess, small interactions that were pretty persistent throughout the college experience that I don't feel like I had as much in high school. But being able to talk to the faculty and your teachers sort of as a grown person, as like an adult rather than like just some kid, I thought was pretty great too. So it was surprising, but in a good way, I would say.
How about you, Liam?
Honestly, I'm not sure. Not much. There's nothing like big that comes out that surprised me. I mean, the whole college experience was new at the time, like a year ago, and I was just adjusting to it. I didn't have any big expectations that were like different, but yeah, nothing huge for me.
Cool. How about you, Kayla?
I think for me, it's just what shocked me is how many resources there are on campus available for students. At my school, there is like a food pantry that's available for students, an area for like a career center that, you know, has suits and has like clothing for you to wear for your interview. And even like they even provide services where they do like a mock interview with you to prepare you for like a job interview. And of course, like the faculty, everyone is just so welcoming and really committed to like students learning and whatnot. And for me, what shocked me is just like personal growth. College definitely pushes you out of your comfort zone and makes you grow. Like it's a great opportunity for character development, I feel like. And I'm still learning, I'm still developing as a young adult, but I feel like I'm at a place now where I wish I was 5 years ago. So it's just amazing to see how time goes by so fast and how things change.
Awesome. Kimberly, did you have another question or?
Yes. What would you guys say is the best advice you would give a new college student?
Or to pick on Liam, what do you wish someone had told you before you went to college last year?
I mean, kind of answering both questions. I really encourage people to get involved in student organizations or like just going out and meeting people. Honestly, I'm kind of shy. I don't like going out and just talking to anyone. But joining a student org, I found, you know, it was really easy to meet new people, make new connections, and just have like find a group of people to spend time with. And I think if you know, I didn't check out any student orgs, I'd be a bit more lonely at college, and it wouldn't be as fun. So I definitely encourage new students to go out and get involved.
How about you, Kayla?
I think a piece of advice for college students is to definitely not be afraid to, you know, meet people, to talk to new people, maybe find like a study group that you can rely on and bond with like throughout your college experience, but also it's kind of like a double-edged sword, like, you know, like to go meet people, to not be afraid to make connections, but also to focus on yourself. I feel like people come and go, like friends, boyfriends in life or girlfriends in life, they come and go. But if you invest in yourself, in things that people can't take away from you, like, you know, the knowledge you have, your degree, career, I feel like that's really important. So that's a piece of advice.
To expand on what Kayla and Liam said, definitely like find a group of friends to socialize and hang out with, because that makes your homework, I think, a lot easier, especially if you have like a group of people you can go to when you're struggling with a project, or if you're procrastinating on a project and you would rather go talk to them. So they can tell you to stop doing that and actually get your work done. But having a core group of friends is really important, I think. But as a part of that too, just in general, take risks. I like smart risks, obviously, but take risks and really sort of experiment with what you're wanting to learn, especially in your first couple of years. It's your time to figure out what it is you want to do. Maybe even like why you're in college if your first major is not working out. I changed my major. I got involved in a bunch of different student organizations because I didn't know what I wanted to do right away, even though I told myself I did. So really, don't be afraid to take a risk, and also like don't be afraid to take something away as a learning lesson from a failure, whether it's a class or a relationship that doesn't work out, or a I don't know, just some other like intramural activity, I guess. These are all like opportunities to learn whether or not you're in a classroom. So the more time you invest in yourself, like Kayla said, while you're a student on or off campus, I think is super important. But yeah, don't be too serious with it, I guess. Get out there and meet some people.
Awesome.
There's one thing Zaak said that I do want to emphasize a little bit, is that I'm probably not the model student from when I was an undergrad. I almost got kicked out of school because I was spending too much time partying and not enough time on my grades. And then I changed my major several times. But I do want to emphasize that like college is the time to experiment. And if you do fail, that is okay. If you don't do well in a class, that's okay, because this is your time to figure out what you want to do. And so don't like fail and then just give up. Like be like, okay, so maybe pre-med wasn't for me. Like, what can I do? Like, how can I use that experiences and like try out something new? Definitely do that, earlier in your college career, because you do have to eventually graduate. So I just want to say, like, it's okay to change your major, like you said, Zaak. It's okay to mess up. Like, you're 18 in your early 20s, and that is the time for you to do that. And don't beat yourself up too much about it. Definitely study hard, but if you don't get the grade that you wanted, it's okay. Like, there's plenty of resources where you can either retake the class, or you can talk with your academic advisor and see if like maybe you should be taking a different direction. And like I said, I ended up leaving the healthcare field, but now after taking all those like science classes, I'm taking all this experience that I've had and going into a master's degree now for public health. So just remember, everything, whether you failed a class or didn't do as well, is an experience that you can take with you later on. And I know a lot of students put a lot of pressure on themselves to get perfect grades every time. But as my best friend Katie said, C's get degrees. So it's okay if you don't get straight A's in every single class. Just it's all about the learning experience and what you can take with you after you go, even if it's not like a perfect 4.0. So.
Awesome. Roxy or Kimberly, did you have any more questions or?
I think I had just one more question that we didn't touch on, kind of talking about changing degrees. How did y'all end up deciding to go with the degrees that you had? Like I said, mine was like just a bunch of trial and error and like failing classes before I finally realized like, okay, I should be a writer because that's what I excel at. Zaak, Kayla, Liam, what kind of led you to the paths that you went on in college?
I know you said my name first, but I am actually going to let our two actual college students address this one first.
I can go, Liam, if that's okay first. Okay. So as we know, Many Filipinos are nurses, nurses, doctors, lawyers, something in that realm, right? So for me, like my mom is a nurse. A lot of people in my family are nurses. And of course, it is a stereotype, and I feel like I fit that stereotype, not necessarily a bad thing. But for me, I'm a very outgoing person, so I love talking to people, interacting with them. So that's definitely a part of nursing, especially bedside nursing. And I'm also a huge nerd. I love learning about like the science of the body, how things work, interventions to be done. So I feel like nursing really fit that for me. And that ultimately led me to choose nursing as a career choice. And I feel like right now I'm too far deep, so there's no backing out.
I feel like I kind of decided what I wanted to do pretty early. Like back elementary, middle school, I just like played a lot of video games, and I was like, I kind of want to make games, and I don't want to do that now, but that's kind of what got me into coding and programming. I started like learning about computers and stuff in middle school, and then finally got into some like real coding in high school. And I kind of realized I didn't really want to do game design, but I really enjoyed the problem solving of programming and just like creating something, just like a program or something that functions and it works. And I just find a lot of fun in that. And so that's what I decided to do in college. And yeah.
I had, speaking of like, things you want to do since you've been a kid, when I was a kid, I wanted to be an astronaut. So I went to Iowa State for a degree in aerospace engineering originally. And my first year in college, I think probably the toughest thing I learned was just learning how to learn at the college level, because the classes were much harder. But after my first year, I discovered that maybe engineering wasn't for me, but maybe some of my other intramural activities weren't for me either. I was in the Air Force ROTC, but my vision started getting worse, and I was struggling with my grades. So all of this sort of prompted like a really serious look at like, what are things that I'm good at? What are things I'm interested in? I liked building, a flying machine for a class that we had, but was it something I really wanted to do for like work after school? Going back to what I said earlier, I was a bit more social, and didn't necessarily balance that with my classes originally, but I realized that about myself. So I decided to look at some of the degree programs that were a lot more social, where there was a lot more like person-to-person interaction. So I ended up switching to political science because that really sort of fit my strengths at the time, because it was writing oriented. There's a lot of critical thinking and analysis, which I like. I like solving puzzles or putting things together. So really, it just ended up, I think, like figuring out what I wanted to do was the result of like having some honest conversations, I think, with yourself, but then also people who know you too, like your parents or your academic advisor. But yeah.
Awesome. I didn't have any more questions. I don't think Kimberly did. I think Roxy, you're good.
Yeah. So, yeah, we can probably close up. And do you have anything you want to say, Steve?
Well, yep. First off, I'd like to thank all of our panelists, Liam, Zachary, and Kayla, for giving your time so that we could have this webinar. Coming up also in October 22nd is our next webinar. Kimberly, did you want to say something about our next one?
Yeah, our next one is going to be about FAFSA, as the FAFSA, or the free application for federal student aid, opens up October 1st for those who are going to be in college next fall. So we will be going over the FAFSA application, what to expect, and how to file.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And we certainly recommend that for those going to college, and we actually invite their parents to come for that as well. So, all right.
Well, thank you, everyone. We appreciate you joining. And this will go online for anyone who wants to rewatch and listen to our amazing panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.